Neighbor's dogs kill co-worker's cat. Co-worker ruins their Christmas. Quick note, I was part of this story, but not the dealer nor receiver of the revenge. Years ago, I used to work with a receptionist in a vet clinic named Margaret. Margaret was and still is a very sweet 65-year-old woman who had been at this practice since it was opened, some 40 years ago. She always had a smile, a joke, compliments and baked goods for your birthday. She never had an unkind word to say about anyone. She was seriously one of the coolest people I had ever worked with, and she basically knew everyone, from our regular clients to our mailman's granddaughter. The only bad thing about Margaret, and this was not her fault, was that she and her family lived next to one of the trashiest nastiest families I had ever met that had two even nastier pit bulls. I'm talking nastier than sh*t, that had been hoarded by dung beetles for years nasty. And these dogs were constantly escaping and terrorizing the neighborhood, even trying to get into her house. Margaret had asked them more than once to please keep the dogs contained, especially since she had an elderly fat cat named Smokestack and these pits had attacked smaller animals before. The family basically told her to rot in hell, that they knew what they were doing, how dare she accuse the breed, yada yada, basically blowing her off. Margaret knew there had been reports filed against her neighbors but nothing had ever been done about it really. So she made sure to keep Smokestack in the house to keep him safe, and was very careful not to let him out. If you had been paying attention up until this point, you'll notice I'm using the word was and had regarding old Smokestack. And it was as awful as you think. 3 weeks before Christmas, Margaret had the day off, and was in the garage with Smokestack fiddling with some Christmas decorations. Unbeknownst to her, the pits next door got out and broke through the bottom of her garage door. They went right for Smokestack before she could blink and started to tear the cat apart. Margaret screamed for help, and it was only when her son and husband came out with a baseball bat that they were able to free Smokestack from the jaws of these dogs. I was working this day and will never forget when she came in, crying harder than I had ever seen anyone cry in my life, clutching poor dying Smokestack in her arms. Her husband had to hold her while we tried to bring Smokestack back, but we couldn't do it. It would have taken a miracle of God and then some, and he passed away, a truly crap way to go in what should have been the golden years of his fat cat life. Margaret sat there for a while with his mangled body, quietly crying for a while, before she finally kissed whatever part of him was still intact and stood up. She told us all, "I've got a job to do, take care of him, girls," and then left. We figured Margaret would take a few days off to be with family and then continue on with life as normal. We figured wrong. Now when I say Margaret knew everyone, I mean everyone. Right after she left the hospital, Margaret gathered herself up and went to the police with pictures of poor Smokestack and told her story. The same police officers she had watched grow up over the last 20 years from rowdy middle schoolers she used to help babysit to the officers they were today. They were absolutely shocked to hear what had happened to their surrogate grandma and pushed her case to the front of the line. The case found itself before a judge whose daughter had gone to school with Margaret's daughter. The judge granted an emergency, dangerous animal extraction warrant to her neighbors. Of course, there was a hearing. Within 2 weeks, which I gotta admit, was ridiculously fast. The neighbors tried to argue that their dogs weren't aggressive. They even went so far as to accuse Margaret of having it out for their family and making it all up. But their argument trickled when the dozens of dangerous animal reports were presented and finally completely dried out when Margaret presented the surveillance video her grandson had gotten showing the dogs coming into her property and attacking poor Smokestack. The emergency extraction and humane destruction of her neighbor's dogs was granted. It was Christmas Eve when Margaret heard a knock on her door. She opened it up to see the neighbors standing there, sobbing uncontrollably. They were begging her to stop animal control, that they had these dogs since they were puppies, how the kids would be devastated, and it would ruin Christmas, and if she could find it in her heart to give the dogs another chance. Up until this moment, the neighbors had behaved abominably. They didn't offer to fix the garage. They never apologized for trying to slander her name in court. Hell, they didn't even pay for Smokestack to be cremated. At no point had they even shown the slightest shred of remorse for what damage their dogs had done. And as the neighbors stood there, blubbering and whimpering about how this was going to ruin their Christmas, Margaret looked them straight in the eye and told them, in her calmest voice, "You took away my family, so now I'm taking yours," and shut the door in their face, just as animal control pulled up onto the driveway. Margaret was not surprised as she watched the dogs get hauled into the truck and taken away. After all, it was her idea for animal control to take the dogs on Christmas Eve, a perk from having known the ACOF as a supervisor for years. Margaret even made sure the dogs were euthanized before the outside Christmas lights turned on that night. The family never received the remains, nor did they ever get a chance to bring another animal into their family, as the father proceeded to drunk drive into a telephone pole that same night, killing him instantly. Mom went off the deep end, so CPS picked up the kids by February, and ultimately, the house foreclosed in September. Despite how traumatic Smokestak's death was, I'd like to think that, if the neighbors had shown at least some regret, Margaret might not have gone as far as she did. She was / is still the person to forgive and forget. Or maybe, she ultimately knew it had to be done, to push it to this point of no return before another family lost a member to these irresponsible neighbors. Either way, thank you Margaret for making the world a little bit safer for the pets in the world. And rest in peace, Smokestak. Hopefully I'll see you on the other side with your favorite orange sock and a can of tuna. TLDR, Cowwalker's cat is killed by neighbor's dogs. Cowwalker destroys neighbor's family on Christmas Eve. 14 people, including me, walk out in protest. So, Friday the 13th happened. It was glorious, for all intents and purposes. I run day-to-day operations for a decent-sized company. We have a president who runs the company in-house. He can be tedious, overwhelming, and an all-around dick sometimes. Other times, he can be cool as can be. This was one of the times he was an overbearing, micromanaging dickbag. As shop foreman, I take my job seriously with morale. If my guys aren't happy, good product isn't produced. If good product isn't produced, customers aren't happy. Looking towards quality control, it doesn't help when guys are overworked, underpaid, and underappreciated. Friday was one of those days that started out well, but by 6:40 am, it had deteriorated to shit. Note, we officially don't start work until 7 am. After the start, it was bitch about this, micromanage that. Several people being cussed at and belittled. Everyone had had enough. Once in our programming office, the idea was floated by someone that we should walk out. He can't fire us all. Now, we've all joked about this time after time, but it's never been more than a thought. We grit our teeth and bear it. That day was something different. After getting yelled at again for something out of my control, I finally said fuck it. When someone asked if I was in and serious, I said yes. Then, it snowballed from there. A total of 20 were supposed to walk out, but due to cold feet and a few taking a shit, only 14 made it. At 10 am, we made our move. I told everyone to wait until he would be distracted with a machine and we'd all clock out and leave. We all waited. When he was distracted, I gave the roundup signal, and everyone left. A few stopped for beer to relax. We weren't intending on going back to negotiate until Monday. We all met at a guy's house and discussed why we walked, what we wanted, and what our terms were. One thing was very clear, we all came back or no one did. After talking for 2.5 hours and coming to our terms, we decided to head back after a text from him. We were going to corner him, we were going to talk it straight, or we weren't working anymore. The talk lasted almost 2 hours, with both parties flexing their given muscles at some point. But one thing was made clear, things were going to change, or we'd all go look for new jobs. After several people were threatened with being fired, and none being let go, we came to terms that benefited us. For once, our workplace had so much morale. People were excited to work again. We went back to work with a purpose, agenda, and pride. This is the first Monday I've looked forward to work in a year. Even the guys who couldn't come, the people in the main office, we stirred the pot. We've made it known, we are not going to go through this anymore. I'll vouch for any of my men, and I do it again in a heartbeat. Edit. Thanks for my first silver kind person. I again retain, I'm not posting this for karma. I'm a huge lurker and posted BC. I want people to know that solidarity and group leadership can lead to some extraordinary things. Edit 2. Thanks to everyone who has commented and replied. Also thanks to the Anons who gave me a platinum, 2 golds, and another silver. I've shared the success of our story with my comrades, and they thank you too. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe.